Okay, so we'll talk a little bit about ethics. This is within chapter 3. There are some resources for the APA Code of Ethics, as well as the Belmont Report, which is also ethically based, regarding research on Canvas. All right, so we'll just start talking about Milgram's experiment. We've talked about Milgram's shock experiment, and he conducted a series of studies studying obedience to authority. And yeah, volunteers were told to they'd be participating in a study on the effects of punishment on learning. In fact, they were told that they would elicit an electric shock into a learner. It was actually a Confederate, and they found that about 2 out of 3 participants continued to deliver shocks to the highest level that they believed to be real, even though they weren't. So this actually challenged a lot of our beliefs about our ability to resist authority in the face of doing horrific things. But the study is also important regarding ethics in behavioral research, as this research could not be replicated in this way today. With some alterations, it could be, but not in its original form. There's a couple of ethical standards that are historical in nature. We have the Nuremberg Code. This was a set of 10 rules for medical research that came about as a response to the horrific research the Nazis did during the Holocaust. There was also the Declaration of Helsinki that expanded the Nuremberg Code in '64 and required journal editors to ensure published research was compliant as well. So there's a couple initial codes of ethics. But then we also had the Belmont Report, as there was continued news about ethically questionable studies, and this was in 1979. It defined several principles and applications that apply to medical and behavioral research investigations. So this applies to research within psychology. There are 3 basic principles of ethics in the Belmont Report. One of them is beneficence. This is when research has to express the benefits with minimal risks, as determined by risk-benefit analysis in research. So when somebody conducts research, the benefits have to outweigh the risks. And the hope is that there are minimal risks. If there are heightened risks or more or greater than minimal risk involved, every effort should be made to decrease that risk, and the benefits have to outweigh those risks. That is beneficence. Also, respect for persons or autonomy. Participants in research have to be treated as independent humans, and they can exercise informed consent. So this is when an informed consent needs to be created and offered and required to be completed or agreed to by every participant, in that it includes all of the benefits, risks, procedures, um, details, ethical risks, and that has to be presented to participants, and they have to agree to it in order for them to be able to participate in the study. There's also the principle of justice, and this encompasses making sure that everybody has the same chance of taking part in a research study. And you are not necessarily discriminating against anybody or leaving anybody out for any reason whatsoever. So these are all ethical issues that need to be taken into consideration when conducting research. Then we have the APA Ethics Code, and this is amended here and there. It applies to psychologists in their many roles. And just to show you what that website looks like, we have this right here. There is a link to it in Canvas. And as you can see here, there were 2010 and 2016 amendments as well. So the most recent is dated January 1st, 2017. So when you're citing it, you can use the 2017 date. And you can see here, now there's preambles, principles, how to resolve ethical issues issues related to competence, interacting with others, confidentiality, advertising, record keeping, education, research, assessment, therapy, and then a few history and effective date pieces of information. So all of this has to be taken into consideration when practicing or researching in the field of psychology. So there are 5 general principles in this. And as in the Belmont report, there is the principle of beneficence in maximizing the benefits of research and minimizing any harm possible. Also, fidelity and responsibility. This is when we have to establish relationships of trust and be aware of the responsibilities to society and to the specific communities in which we work as well. Again, there's the beneficence and non-malfeasance. Here's the fidelity and responsibility. We have to uphold professional standards of conduct, clarify our professional roles, manage conflicts of interests as well. And there's information about that down below. Additionally, let's see here, contribute a portion of their professional time for literal nor compensation or personal advantage. So uphold the highest standards of behavior. And again, got more in the PowerPoint, but also just, then we have integrity as well. We need to ensure that we promote accurate, honest, and truthful information, whether we are researching or teaching or practicing in psychology. We don't steal, cheat, engage in fraud, subterfuge, or intentional misrepresentation of fact. Again, keep promises, maximize benefits, and minimize harm. Then we have justice. Again, that's also included in the Belmont report as well. We need to make sure that all people have access and benefit from psychology research, the practice of research as well. Then we have respect for people's rights and dignity. And we have to ensure that we respect individuals' privacy, confidentiality, and independence as well. We also need to make sure that we protect the rights of people who may be vulnerable or may not be able to make independent decisions as well. We have to take into consideration cultural, individual differences as well, including age, gender identity, race, ethnicity, etc. As you can see here, when we work with individuals of these groups, and we try to limit the amount of bias that we may have in any way, shape, or form when we are practicing, researching, or teaching as well. So, okay, so in regard to assessing risks, the assessment of risks and benefits, yeah, when it comes to beneficence, we have to examine the potential risks and benefits of research or perform a risk-benefit analysis. And in most cases, there's probably going to be minimal risk. There's probably not going to be greater than minimal risk in most research, but this will be taken into consideration when you conduct a study in this course. I will be determining this individually. If this were a formal study, we would be using an institutional review board or an IRB. So the risks in psychological research include things like the potential for psychological or physical harm, or even loss of confidentiality. That in and of itself is an ethical risk. And when it comes to, again, there is not going to be a purely any study out there that is not at risk ethically somehow, potentially. The benefits might be direct. There could be treatment for a psychological problem, could be monetary compensation, or things like satisfaction of contributing to scientific knowledge. So those are all benefits that can come about from research being conducted. Procedures that could conceivably cause physical harm to participants are rare, but they're always possible. More common than physical stress is psychological stress. So we have to exercise safeguards to help participants deal with stress. So even with that, in the research that I am currently conducting in working on the predictive nature of just world and unjust world beliefs on the belief in conspiracy theories, I actually have to take into consideration the ethical issue of participants potentially experiencing some psychological stress when they discuss their personal beliefs. That could actually be considered to be a risk factor or a risk in the overall research. Confidentiality, that's also an issue when data is collected from subjects in making sure that participants are not identifiable. So this may include coding participant names. It might also include not collecting identifiable information. It might include collecting that information, then erasing it once data analysis begins. It also includes making sure that that data is confidential and safe as well, whether that is on a cloud or on a hard drive or in a locked filing cabinet. Privacy. This is going to refer to the participant's ability to maintain control of the information they provide and behaviors observed. So this is making sure that everything that they provide to us, they have the right to, basically, they have the right to continue to participate or withdraw from the study at any given time. Also, we know that the internet has posed a lot of issues related to privacy as thousands of people post messages on websites every day. Thus, it's making it more difficult to keep information anonymous or confidential or private. Okay, there is informed consent, and I will have you make up a quick one of these for your study. But it's the idea that potential participants in research should be provided with information that might influence their active decision to participate. So what's going to be included in an informed consent, which would then be presented to participants, and participants would either agree with the informed consent and then participate in the study, or they would not and withdraw their participation from the study there. It would include what is the purpose of this research, what are the procedures, what are the risks and benefits? Am I going to be compensated? How is my information going to be kept confidential? You have to let them know that their participation is voluntary and they can withdraw at any point in time, whether that is before the study, during the study, or even when the data has been collected. Participants still have the ability to withdraw their information or their data from the study. And then also your contact information for any questions participants may have. And here is some information in creating that informed consent. There might be some autonomy issues. And again, hopefully a lot of these ethical issues are avoidable in the research that you're conducting, but just know that there is no study that is completely that is going to be completely without risk. So if somebody's conducting research on special populations like minors, individuals who are in psychiatric hospitals, or adults who have cognitive impairments, or somebody like inmates, anybody in the criminal justice system, there will probably have to be special precautions. And so this can include assent. This is an agreement by a minor in which the written consent form is signed by a parent or guardian. So if the person cannot independently provide consent, somebody else may have to provide that for them. Any procedure that limits an individual's freedom to consent is potentially coercive. So somebody that might not be able to independently provide their consent to participate could be seen to be coerced by a researcher to participate, and so they're not doing it of their free will, especially if there's something like incentives. If the incentive is greater than what would be expected in a study, whether the population is vulnerable or not, that could be seen as coercive as well. So when it comes to withholding information and deception, so withholding some information from participants, that's usually acceptable, especially if the research is designated as minimal risk. And so the information would not affect the decision to participate, and the information will be provided later that this was actually what we were doing. Actively misrepresenting information about the nature of a study is what's called deception. And withholding information is sometimes referred to as passive deception, whereas active deception is actively providing misinformation about the nature of the study. So the difference here is that you're basically omitting the information. That could be the passive deception, or you're actively deceiving somebody if you tell them that a study is for one thing, but it's for something else. That's Milgram's study would be an example of one that there was active deception and potentially unethical as a result of that as well. So the type of elaborate deception, okay, I didn't skip one, seen in the Milgram study has become less common. So since Milgram, researchers have become more sensitive to ethical issues when they plan the studies, and the general level of awareness of ethical issues has led researchers to conduct studies in other ways that are not as deceptive. Ethics committees or like institutional review boards now review the research, and elaborate deception is less likely to be approved by these boards as well. There's also debriefing. This is going to be important as well, in that after a study is done, you include an explanation of the purpose of the research. So this is a chance for the researcher to, if they withheld any information, if they deceived participants, or if there were any potential harmful effects of participation, they can cover those at that time. So an example of this would be to, again, if there was a study that could cause potential psychological distress, you'd be able to address that during the debriefing period, and even offer maybe contact information for a therapist or something of the sort because of the potential psychological risk. It's also an effective way of dealing with ethical issues that arise in research, something like psychological harm. So at least in some circumstances, it should be thorough. It's part of our obligation to treat participants with dignity and respect to ensure that they understood what occurred and if there are any issues to address those as well. And here's that IRB. This is an institution that receives federal funds. It must have an IRB. It's responsible for reviewing research conducted at that institution. It has a minimum of 5 members. One has to be an external member. Federal agencies that regulate IRBs define research as, so here's the definition of research again, the systematic investigation, including research development, testing, and evaluation, and it's designed to develop or contribute to generalizable knowledge. So that is the way that federal agencies conceptualize research that regulate IRBs. So again, if you go and conduct research at the next institution that you are at, it will have to be approved by our IRB. If you go to graduate school and do the same thing as well. So the research with human subjects is classified as either minimal risk or greater than minimal risk. So minimal risk, you're probably good at getting it approved. Greater than minimal risk, there's probably going to be additional steps taken to ensure that as little risk as possible occurs. So if they're determined to have greater than minimal risk, there's a full board review. The review can be extensive and time-consuming, and they may require changes in methodology or changes altogether. So, for example, I was going to study the relationship between psychopathy and as a personality trait and conspiracy theory belief. However, psychopathy is considered to be a sensitive topic. And so as a result of that, my study was going to be pose greater than minimal risk. And there was a variety of checkpoints, basically, I was going to have to stop at as I conducted research to ensure that we were keeping the risk as small as possible. But this added an immense amount of time to the process and effort, which would be okay. But instead, I opted to change my variable to just world and unjust world beliefs. Now my study is considered to be minimal risk, and thus I can move smoothly without all of those checkpoints. So minimal risk, it means the potential risk to participants is no greater than in daily life or what we come up against routinely. So it qualifies for one of the following, either an exempt review. It's in one of the several categories that are exempt from more rigorous review requirements of federal regulations. Expedited, it's not exempt, but the research or the review is less extensive and time-consuming, and limited. It's used with research that includes benign behavioral interventions for which sensitive data are collected from adult participants. So this is, it's kind of an expedited process in comparison to if your research is going to be minimal risk or greater than minimal risk. So you start here. Is the project research? Yes. Is it systematic? Okay, so we're using the scientific method? Yes. Is it generalizable to a certain population? Yes. If no, okay, there's no review required because it's not research. Yes. Is it minimal risk? All right. Is it minimal risk? No, it's greater than minimal risk. You get the full IRB. Yes. So this is what it probably includes, and these are the three types of um, reviews that'll be conducted. Also, research with non-human animal subjects. They are used in behavioral research for a variety of reasons, and such research continues to be necessary because, again, as long as the research benefits outweigh the risks, we can do this. Personally, professionally, I have some ethical qualms with this, but again, according to the standards guidelines that we follow, we can still do this. There are strict laws and ethical guidelines that govern both research and teaching procedures in which animals are used. The Institutional Animal Care and Use Committee reviews the procedures to ensure all regulations are adhered to. And there is an area that's developed in the APA ethics code as well related to animals. In this class, we will not be conducting any sort of research on animals. Okay, being an ethical researcher, so regarding misrepresentation, which has occurred in the past with research, as famous as like the Stanford prison experiment, the data related to that was misrepresented. And so a researcher that is ethical does not misrepresent data or misrepresent analysis or the conclusions of research. So this would be considered to be fraud. This is when you fabricate data, come up with it, misrepresent it. It's considered very serious. It's not incredibly rare. Also plagiarism. This is misrepresenting another's work as your own. Yes, it is increasing in prevalence due to the internet. The development of content by artificial intelligence would also be under this. You're misrepresenting another entity's work as your own. Still plagiarism. Word for word plagiarism, you literally copy and paste it. You're not quoting it or anything like that. Also, there's paraphrasing plagiarism. You're using ideas without attributing you are not giving the author of those ideas credit. So you say a certain statistic of there are so many people that experience this every year. You did not come up with that. And so as a result of that, you need to provide credit to the individual that conducted the study to collect that data and analyze it. Without doing so, even though you are not copying word for word, you're still stealing somebody else's idea. So it is important to make sure to cite any information that is not your own, whether it is word for word, which will be plagiarism, or intellectual in nature, and that you're using somebody else's idea without their consent. So this is a nice flow chart. Okay, did I write the words? Okay, so no, you need to quote the words and provide a citation. So literally, any sort of quotation you use of somebody else's, you copy and paste information, it should be quoted and a citation is provided. But you know, in this class that the quotations have to be limited to 30%. Did you write the words? Yes. So you use the words, but did you think of the idea? If you thought of it, if it is your idea, you don't need to cite anything. If you didn't, if you got that information or idea from somewhere else, you just need to cite it. So with that being said, I hope that gives you a general idea of ethics in research. It is a basic primer to this. If you have questions as we get going here, please let me know. I'm here to help in any way, shape, or form. Otherwise, I hope you have a wonderful day.